Hey, let's get to these texts. We have so many of these great texts to look at and learn from. So I thank you for joining me during our morning day text sessions every weekday, every Saturday, unless otherwise scheduled, as we work our way through these different ancient books and texts, histories mainly having to do with the Bible, but also with other related figures and events. And currently we're in the book of Revelation. We've been going through the texts, different material that I've translated to date, and that has given us an insight into the way that the first century Christians, in some sense, were organized into different groups in different locations, and the kinds of things they were having to deal with, the kinds of difficulties, the positives, the things that they were doing to help further the great message. And also in our review, the things that God was communicating to the Christians, right? Because the Christians are only really what they claim to be if Jesus Christ exists, if God exists. So we've talked about those things. We have an ongoing series right now on Sundays with C.W. Jaw Talk, where we show and talk about ancient texts predating the time when Jesus and the Christians existed, but that foretold very specific things that, according to the records we have, were uniquely fulfilled in Jesus. And based on the existence or the condition of Jerusalem today, that is, with no temple, praising Jah, where sacrifices are being offered, and with records that would help us establish a lineage through King David, like the God Jah promised would happen. We don't have the things they had in the first century in order to provide the kind of verification and evidence like what we read in some of these texts. So we even get genealogies in two of the histories of Jesus' life based on the records that they kept or that they could check before the temple was destroyed several decades later after Jesus died. All right, so in our view, after Jesus died and he came back to life, the resurrection, we believe he has been working through the Christians. And of course, using anybody. It's not just one specific group. Just like the God Jah would use other individuals like Balaam. But all while he was preserving his people, the nation of Israel, from Egypt through the promised land in order to deliver the Messiah. We leave it to him, but we believe that from the time when Jesus came, lived, and died, we believe since that time that the Christian congregation has been representing God on earth and teaching people about the Messiah, the Christ, the one we believe is the Son of God who came from heaven and lived as a man and was put to death wrongly. And through that transaction where he gave his life and someone, the devil, took it for no reason, we believe that canceled out what took place in Eden. And that's why Jesus is called the last Adam in 1 Corinthians 15. So in the book of Revelation, we believe that Jesus, this figure that I just described in relation to the history of Israel and the Messiah and the death and resurrection, we believe has been and did communicate messages like this to people like John, who is identified as John at the opening of Revelation, and many believe is the same John that lived and walked with Jesus, wrote a whole history of some of those events. So now we're in Revelation 21. We're getting near the end. At the end of the show, I'll also give a couple updates on the Christian Witnesses of Jah discussion forum and the Michael the Archangel series. I have a couple updates on both of those. I'll save it for after the show. Okay, so we're going to get to our reading, though, with that kind of build up in mind, so that people who maybe join us for the first time or just for our own enrichment, right? We come together, we try to about once a day So we want to get a good sense of what's going on every day. We should be reminded of the basic message, the great message, that after things went wrong in Eden, Jah promised a seed that he delivered and that we believe in, and that's who we're talking about. Okay, so Revelation 21, we're going to read verses 9 through 14, and then we're going to skip and read verses 22 through 27. I say skip only because, again, I haven't translated all of the texts, so I'm not going to present like a mishmash of translations and then get into potential differences with texts. I'm going to just focus on what I know best and make the most of it until I have more that we can share together. But you're free to, of course, read the whole account on your own and evaluate it. But I don't think any of the missing material from the text is going to change anything. It's just more of the descriptions given. And so I'm grouping them together in a way I think is best. There's a little bit more material than normally, but because of the way the revelation is given, you kind of have to keep going until you finish the description. So there's a couple things described, and we'll read it and talk about it. It fits in with what we've also been reading in the text I've translated previously in the earlier parts of Revelation. So a lot of this will sound familiar to you based on just those readings that we've done. All right, verse 9, Revelation 21. One of the seven angels, having the seven cups full of the seven plagues, the last ones, came to me, and he spoke with me, saying, "You must come. I will show you the young bride, the wife or woman." These terms are basically interchangeable in early times. If you had a woman, she was basically your wife. And women had a man. Now, men could have more women than is often allowed or considered normal today. But that's not based on the Bible. Either way, I'm not saying it depends on where you are, right? There are different places on the earth today where the culture is not the same and may be able to facilitate more than one wife for a man. But my point in bringing that out is just that you understand that this wife itself is a wife of many individuals, at least in our view or my view. It's not a required view. But it appears that this same wife, I use it in quotes only because it's representative of my view, of the 144,000 who are chosen from the earth, according to Revelation 14, and who follow the Lamb wherever he goes, and who are virgins in the spiritual sense, that they did not defile themselves to the point where they could not exist as his bride. These are the ones who were cut down. Maybe those who just died, like Paul talks about in 1 Thessalonians 4. Either way, we know Paul talks about ruling as kings. We know that those who are cut down and rule with Christ rule as kings. And as you're going to see in the rest of our reading, people on the earth also will rule as kings in Jah's kingdom. All right, so we've got the woman, the bride. The woman, bride is fine because the woman is coming to the Lamb, the man, in this sense, the figurative man. So it's depicting the relationship we today depict often as a bride and husband, not man and woman. Okay. Verse 10, so he took me away in spirit upon a mountain, great and high up, and he showed me the holy city, New Jerusalem, or Jerusalem, I'm sorry, coming down out of heaven from God. It's described as New Jerusalem earlier in one of our prior readings. Okay, verse 11, having the glory of God. The city's light was like a very costly stone, like jasper, polished to shine like crystal. Verse 12, the city has a wall great and high up. It has 12 gate towers, and upon the gate towers are 12 angels. And names have been written on the gate towers, which are the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. And so there's an association here with the 12 tribes that are also associated with the 144,000 in both Revelation 7 and, well, not specifically in Revelation 14, but certainly in Revelation 7, the 144,000 that are depicted in Revelation 14 come from the what appear to be, but may also be literal, figurative tribes of Israel. because they're not the same as in the actual literal original text. But there are reasons that may be in a literal sense. So we'll move on from that, however, because we're not going to focus on the literal versus figurative aspects of Revelation, or specifically the 12 tribes right now. Because remember, James also talks about, he opens his letter. I guess I will talk about it for a minute, right? James opens his letter and says he's addressing the 12 tribes scattered about. And I don't think he's referring to the non-Christian Jews in the diaspora. I think he's talking about, obviously, as he goes on to address the brothers and Christians. So there definitely seems to be a sense in which there was a spiritual awareness, a spiritual tribal association, I should say, with these things and the Christian belief, which was for a new heavens and new earth. Two things, in both of which rulership will be, because they will be places where actual beings made in Jah's image exist, and so there will have to be authority in each place for Jah's will to continue. He will be here, as we're going to see, and so there's nothing unusual with there being rulership still on the earth and in New Jerusalem, because they're two different locations, even if they're also brought together, right? Because the kings of the earth, as you're going to see, they bring things into New Jerusalem. So it's not like just one combined unit. It's one that's located in some sense on the other, or accessible from a place on the new earth. Let's take a further look. Where did I stop? Okay, verse 13. Facing the east are the 3 gate towers. Facing the north are 3 gate towers. Facing the south are 3 gate towers. Facing the west are 3 gate towers. Verse 14. The wall of the city has 12 foundation stones, and upon them are the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. I did not, verse 22, we're jumping now down, so we get the description of the city. Okay, let's just summarize real briefly here before we get to verse 22, which continues the description. So let's do it briefly. We've got the young bride, the woman of the Lamb. He's taken away to a mountain great and high up, right? What is the author of Hebrews, how does he describe Mount Zion, the heavenly city on Mount Zion? So there could be an association here. I'm not talking about Zionism in an earthly political sense. I'm talking about a spiritual mountain and city. Verse 10, great and high up, the holy city Jerusalem, coming down. Okay, so it's up, coming down from God. And then all the descriptions we just read. Verse 22, I did not see a temple in the city, for the Lord God, the Almighty, is the city's temple, as well as the Lamb. The city does not have a need for the sun or for the moon, so they may shine upon it. For the glory of God lights the city, and the Lamb is the city's lamp. So instead of a temple in which, the Hebrews and Jews would go, and other nations who worship their gods, but in terms of the nation of Israel, they had a temple, they would go into it, and there was a flame that was continually lit, and they would also, of course, invoke the presence of Jah, and through things like the Ark of the Covenant and the things in it, Jah's presence would take place in the temple. But in this case, it says, so there's no temple. You go into the city, so it'd be like going into Jerusalem. Let's make an analogy. You go into Jerusalem, literal Jerusalem, and in ancient times, there's a temple. You go into the temple, and there's an inner sanctuary through which you can have communion with God, with Jah, an actual presence with Him, through this inner chamber and various things that He established to conduct His presence, or to associate His presence. But here in this city, you go into the gates, There is no temple. It's just Jehovah. And I don't mean just in any lessening way. It's like the ultimate, right? Why do you go into the temple? You go into the temple for Jehovah. Well, Jehovah is now saying you don't need to go into a temple to reach me. I'm right here. And then it says, and the Lamb. And then it goes on, it says the Lamb and Jah are the temple. Right? The Lamb is on the throne of Jah, and then he actually lets those who conquer sit down on his throne with him as well. And here it then goes on to say that that God lights the city. He's the light. Okay, we're getting a further description now, or association, and the Lamb is the lamp. What does the lamp do? It contains the light and then radiates it out. That's the image we're given. We're not given the image of God and the Lamb as the light. You understand what I'm saying? Like they'd be one in terms of nature potentially as light. Or even, that wouldn't necessarily mean in a Trinitarian sense they could each be lights as they are existing in the city, New Jerusalem. But it differentiates them. It says God is the light and the Lamb is the lamp. It's very similar in some way, not in the absolute and analogous way of Hebrews 1, 2, and 3. But again, you have a lamp and you have the light in the lamp. The light radiates through and out from the lamp. So the lamp essentially becomes the same as the light, right? People associate the two as practically the same, but they're not. Same with this imprint, right? People associate the imprint of the seal wing as basically the same. They recognize it. Oh, that's who that's from. But it's not. There's a difference. And it's an important one. But it's not one we need to get all caught up about beyond that. We just need to understand, okay, light, lamp, both of them are the temple, city. We can go in, access to Jah, Jesus, and probably, in my view, the 144,000. Those who conquered and sat down with him on his throne, who were cut down. And so it says in verse 24, you've got the city, it's come down. We read how it came down. It's got all these precious stones, these towers, gates, angels, names of the 12 apostles, and names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel. And in verse 24, it says that that city that comes down with that glory and all that description of angels, names of tribes and apostles of the Lamb, towers, gates, all the stuff. It says in verse 24, the nations will walk about by means of the city's light, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into the city. Verse 25, the gate towers will not likely be closed by day, since night will not exist there. Verse 26, they will bring the glory and the honor of the nations into the city. Verse 27, nothing of low quality will enter into the city, nor will the one doing a disgusting thing or the one telling a lie. Stop lying. We all make mistakes. We get weak, but we cannot keep practicing lying. That's such a big problem. It's the original problem. And it's going to put us in line for destruction if we don't stop it. Last part of verse 27, however, those who have been written in the Lamb's book of life may enter the city. And there you have it. So, and that, of course, associates this as well with Daniel chapter 12, right? All those who are written down in the book. Now, the cats are getting a little active here. Dada's here as well. I don't know if you saw him. Okay, so let's get back to this text. Now look at 24 and 26. The nations will walk about by means of the city's light. Okay, there's no need for sun or moon anymore. If they're there, you're not even going to realize they're there, because the brightness and the glory of Jehovah's city radiating through all that crystal and among all the gold and other precious things described here and elsewhere in Revelation, and with Jah and the Lamb inside, right? The light and the lamp. No one is going to need any other type of light. And then it says, the kings of the earth, okay, will bring their glory into the city. So it seems to me, since the city has the names of the 12 apostles and the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, and it's the bride, right? It's the young bride that's coming down from heaven. And the 144,000 are depicted as the virgins who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Seems like the association between that group and the 12 tribes and the bride here are the same. And this fits also with New Testament texts that speak about the heavenly city on Mount Zion, which here is described as coming down out of heaven from God. Okay, so if that's the case, if the kings who are cut down because of the witness of Jesus are the 144,000, and they are then the special bride of Christ in terms of being associated with the 12 apostles and the 12 tribes and this city, then the kings of the earth are another group of kings on the earth bringing the glory of the nations into this city, like as a proper tribute, right? We're here to do things, to exist, enjoy, as Josh said, become fruitful, become many, fill the earth, cultivate it. Well, cultivating the earth likely had a purpose, not just for us, but in other ways that would be in some way beneficial for these other beings. So here they are, in a city, on the earth. And the earth is now properly conditioned with the right kinds of kings and nations bringing glory into it. It says their glory, the kings of the earth. So they're allowed, just like the princes in earlier times of the nations of Greece and Persia were allowed in a negative way to be gods of the nations because of the condition of the earth. Well, in a different way, I'm not saying they're going to be gods necessarily, but they're going to be kings in the sense that they have authority over the earth to bring people's produce or glory and their own into this city. And that's why the gate towers aren't closed. It says in verse 26, they will bring the glory and the honor of the nations into the city. Verse 24 says they'll bring their glory into it. And then verse 26, after verse 25 says it's not closed, right? Why do you close something? So people can't get in. It's not closed. People can get in. And it says they do. It says they bring their glory and honor and that of the nations into it. And then it describes the things that will not get into it. And then it talks about those who are allowed into it. Those written in the book of life. So there's just a few things we need to try to avoid, really, right? Let's stop. I mean, we need to try to be honest, truthful. And if we can't, we need to resolve the problem that's not allowing us to do that, right? Lies are not good. And if you're around people who continuously lie, you're in trouble, right? Because they're going to set you up and they're going to be a problem for you. People who lie are really weak, right? They can't deal with the truth. So how are you going to be able to deal with them? If they can't even deal with the truth, they don't care about you. So we need to try to care about the truth. That doesn't mean we have to be so consumed with every single thing that we lose focus on what's most important. But what it does mean is we can't go around deceiving people and expect to be blessed by God and the Lamb, right? And that's obvious. So let's make our choice. Let's do the things that we know we need to do to try to help others to be a part of this vision too. Give them a chance to understand the things that were originally put down by Jah, how things developed, and then from there, the evidence that shows all the things that took place to bring us where we are today. So that, in our view, through belief in Jesus, we can please God, apart from any kind of sacrifices like the Israelites did, and human ones, of course, like nations and people today even do to their gods. God does not require that. He requires us to give him honor and glory, just like he's asking or receiving, because they know that's what he wants, from the nations, kings, in Revelation 21:24-26. Let's give him that now. Let's try to give him praise and honor for everything he's made. It's not that hard, and we don't have to seem fanatical or outrageous to people in ways that, some, I think, religious nuts do. They make it more difficult for people to believe, but maybe they're just trying and having a hard time. So either way, there's a better way to try, and that's by using good reasons, evidence. But you have to also make it clear to the person that they don't know really anything, and everything they think they know, they really don't. They do it anyway, right? Just like driving. Not sure if they're going to die. Never think of dying. People die every day. So people have an evidence problem. They're not associating the way they actually live with the things they aren't sure if they should believe. They're using different standards is what I'm saying. So try to use a standard comparison for them. Use something in life that'll make sense to them in terms of not knowing, but putting their life at risk. Well, if you'll do it for that, why not for this? There's a lot of history and evidence here that tell us why we're here and what's going on. All right, let me give a couple updates on CWJA form. So, as many of you have known, a couple years ago, I pretty much took the CWJA forum down to, like just me. I deleted every member because I started to allow more people in ways that did not first try to verify some of the things they believe and why they want to be involved, or at least not the way I have done recently. And so it became filled with people who had their own interests, constant debating, nonstop arguing over things that people have been talking about for decades, and it caused a lot of disruption. I had people asking for donations for other people involved in debates, all the stuff, and it was just ridiculous. So I just said, you know what, I'm not, until I can restore proper order and have people who are at least, if you're not comfortable identifying yourself at all, that's fine, but don't expect other people to be comfortable with that all the time, right? Why would other people be comfortable inviting someone they don't know to be closely involved with them in spiritual things? That makes no sense. And yet I get people who want to be on the CWJA forum, and I have a typical response I send when I get a request to join, because it's for active CWJs only, those who believe three things: the God Jah, Jesus the Messiah, the Golden Rule. That's it. You believe those three things, I don't care what else you believe or do. The rest is up to you. You'll be judged that way anyway. Then, as long as your actions are consistent with that, you can join us and help us praise Jah. But we're not there to debate each other over these things, right? We talk about that a lot here because other people come to the channel. But on the CWJA forum, it's mainly for people who want to do those three things. So it's not really busy. And I brought it down to 0 pretty much, or just me and one other person not too long ago. Now I've since started letting people in, so it's starting to grow, mainly with those who have agreed, they believe in the three things. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it, and I actually kind of already started doing this. I think the last person I emailed, I said, I've changed the notice. So as long as you either agree with the three things, you're going to agree that those, at a minimum, you accept and believe and you'll help us promote and not argue about. But now I'm going to let people who agree not to be disruptive, and just ask sincere, genuine questions that you really don't understand or have the information to explain, as long as you're not going to openly contradict our three things. If you're just someone who's interested, you're not really religious maybe, but you're not an apologetic nut, well, then I'm going to probably let you in, as long as you give me just some indication of who you are. I'm not looking for your address. Just tell me, where are you from? Where, in general. And who are you? If you can't even do that, well, then go. There's so many other forums and boards you can be involved with. But it's actually it's clearly a sign that you don't have a sense of the golden rule. If you would put someone down for wanting to know just a little bit about you before they invite you to their religious community, then I think you have a problem. I think you have an insecurity you may need to address in ways we clearly are not going to be able to help you with. We're not here for any kind of personal trait issues or pathologies. We're here to teach beliefs based on good reasons. And if you are insecure to the point to where you can't even tell people you expect to associate with religiously a little bit about yourself, I think there are bigger issues you need to address first. But I am going to make it easier for people who don't necessarily believe Jah, the Messiah, or the Golden Rule, but who are interested sincerely, who aren't going to be disruptive, and you have a sincere question or two. Okay, fine. That's okay. It's not a secretive board. We're not a secretive group at all. I don't see how you could be and serve John Jesus all the time. Sometimes, persecution, we have to do certain things, but I think the whole idea is that you have to let people know what's going on and what you believe in a reasonable way. And secrecy just doesn't facilitate that, in my view. But there's nothing wrong with being protective of your group, right? That's what shepherds do. We don't just let wolves in and among the sheep and call it a day. No way. And so I may appoint a few additional moderators too, just to make sure, like when I'm not online, that no one goes nuts. But, we can always remove that stuff. So, look, if people want to use their time to do that kind of thing, they're not going to last long, and they're just wasting their life. So, either way, we'll deal with them. I am going to open it up to more people so that we can talk more outside of places like YouTube in case, there are limitations on the channel or elsewhere. But it'll just give us another venue maybe to continue to develop and discuss issues like this together, mainly with those who are active believers, but also with those who are just interested sincerely in us. Okay, so I'll probably clip that little section of video and post it so that people have a continuous awareness of how the CW Jah Forum is now taking additional people, but with certain basic requirements. Okay, Michael the Archangel. So I hope you guys like part 5 from the clip from CW Jah Talk 21. Later today, I should be uploading part 6, which is going to be another clip from CW Jah Talk 21 that will discuss the associations between the angel sent by Jah, according to Exodus 23:20 through 22, with his name in him and the authority to pardon or not pardon, and Joshua 5:13, the prince of the army of Jehovah, and Judges 13:18 through 22, the one whose name is Wonderful, the angel of Jehovah, who ascended in the flame off the altar as they sacrificed to Jah, after which they then called that angel a god. So I'm gonna clip the part where I read and discussed those texts and then associated them with Michael and the fact that really they would have to be the same angel, right? I mean, what other angel went ahead of the Israelites according to Exodus 23:22 through 22 and fought with all those nations? That's Michael, the same one whom Jude says was there right after Moses died and was disputing with the devil. So we have Michael there. We have Michael according to Enoch even before the flood. But we have those texts from Exodus forward where that angel is specifically sent, then appears to Joshua as the prince, then appears to Manoah and his wife and is called a god, says his name is too wonderful to tell them, or wonderful to the point where he doesn't tell them, and he's called the angel of Jehovah. And then I think there's a part connected with it in Daniel where it says that only Michael is the one who would come to fight him against the princes of Greece and Persia. You think the angel whom Jah sent in Exodus 23 stopped fighting for Israel? and then Gabriel had to appeal to Michael? I mean, that would be the only other conclusion you could come to, right? If Michael's the only one that would come to Gabriel to help him against the princes of Greece and Persia, then the angel whom Jah sent with his name within him obviously didn't come to Gabriel's aid. But I believe that's nonsense, and that's because they're the same. And the same as the prince of the army of Jehovah who confronted Joshua, who then put his face to the earth, called him Lord, and said, "What do you want?" I'm going to tie all... Now, that's part 6. Part 6 is coming later today on those texts from the CW Jah Talk 21. We covered that very well. Part 7 will be the last one, likely in this series, because I think it will cover the remaining stuff unless something really important or new comes later. Part 7, I'm going to tie all this together. A couple of parts ago, I realized, okay, I need this part, this, and I can do it this way. What you're going to see, and the reason I'm focusing so much on this angel from Exodus 23, and then Joshua 5, and then Judges 13, and then to Daniel and Michael and all that stuff, is because in the New Testament, that's what they do. Remember the letter of Jude in P72? It said that a God, Christ, is the one who led them out of the Exodus and then later destroyed those who didn't believe. So there's that. And then there's Paul, who also specifically calls Jesus one with the voice of an archangel, or the archangel. We'll look at the text. But there's only one archangel mentioned, is my point. And don't you think Paul knew who that was? So if Paul calls him the archangel, and Michael the archangel is clearly the same as the angel sent in Exodus 23, the angel in Joshua 5, and the angel in Judges 13, because of the unique descriptions based on the fact that Jah sent him to lead Israel, so he'd be the only one doing all that, or qualifying as being described as things like the prince of the army of Jehovah, called a god. And Paul did know that. I'm going to show that Paul identified Jesus as that angel from Exodus forward. And so his use of archangel almost for sure identifies Jesus as Michael. Unless you're going... Why? Because Michael is clearly the same angel as the one who led the Israelites out of Egypt. Or from the one whom Jah sent forward to lead the Israelites against the other nations. Well, that's the same angel that destroyed those who later didn't believe. At least that's what it clearly shows. And so, unless you're going to say that Jesus was there as a god a la Jude and did those things, well, Michael was leading, the nation and fighting all these people. But that's not the association that you would get from the use of archangel. Because again, unless you're going to say Jesus is another archangel, then it seems pretty obvious Michael is the one who not only disputed over Moses' body, but was sent by Jah with his name to lead Israel against these other nations in battle, just like he's doing in Daniel. So because you don't have these, you have these references at times to this one who led the Israelites, who destroyed those who didn't believe. And then you have him also referred to as the archangel, or an archangel, depending on how many. We can't say more than one existed biblically, so it becomes a question of that. Nevertheless, the activities of the archangel that is named Michael, and the activities that are associated with Jesus as the angel of Jehovah are the same. Or at least would require that you have at least two beings who could have helped Gabriel. Right? It almost makes no sense to say that Christ, a God who led them out of Egypt and later destroyed those who didn't believe, the archangel, like Paul describes him, did that, but then couldn't come to Gabriel's aid. Only Michael could. That would make no sense. And it would be making Michael more than him. And while it's true the Dead Sea Scrolls say that Michael would be elevated above all the gods, that's because he's him. He fits in with all those descriptions, and that's my point. You see, it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense for Gabriel to say that only Michael could come to his aid if a God, Christ, as the angel of Jehovah, was also available and doing all those things. So I'm going to develop that more. I'm just giving you a taste. That'll be a live stream. We'll do that live, part 7, probably tomorrow, or what's tomorrow? So today, Tuesday? Yeah. Either Wednesday or Thursday, we'll do a live stream, Michael and Jesus as the Biblical Archangel, part 7. But later today, I'll upload part 6. So, and also clip the video for the CW JA Forum membership, so people have. I'll probably put that on my the front of my page so people know. Okay, if you want to go into the forum, basically it's mostly for, we do talk about things and post some extra material, but I mainly use it for my translation, and that is helpful for you, I think, if you want to use it or at least see what I'm doing. It's not official yet because I haven't published it, but it's, you know, I'm going through it, and you'll be able to see my thinking on all these texts and what's going on. So, and if you have questions, you let me know. If you see any mistakes or grammatical issues, let me know. But I'm still working on it, and it is coming together, I think, very nicely. I expect to have Proverbs, Greek and Hebrew, done, fully annotated, and published sometime in 2020. And there will be an updated, expanded appendix on my Jah Loves Her Wisdom. The son, I get the title, Wisdom, the Son of God. You know, the article where I describe all the wisdom and Jesus parallels. I've got many more that I've added since then. I haven't updated that article yet, but I'm going to save it for this publication. So that'll be included. And some other stuff on the history of Proverbs. I've spent a lot of time with it, getting all the notes, all the different variants, and just making sure I have the alignment correct in terms of the numbering. That's an issue in Proverbs, as well as in other texts with the Septuagint readings and the Hebrew Aramaic readings at times. So be looking for those videos. Be alert for that live stream tomorrow or Thursday on Michael, part 7. Part 6 later today. More day texts tomorrow as we get close to finishing our readings in the book of Revelation.